Greetings. My name is Ben DeDominicis. I'm an associate professor of political science at the Catholic University of Korea in the International Studies Department. And this is a Zoom recording of my poster presentation, which I am also uploading. But I thought it would be nice to have a 15, 20-minute video presentation of the PDF file that I am uploading for the Curacao 2020 Diversity in Organizations and Communities Conference. And so let me share the screen to go to the PDF file. And pardon me if there's some noise in the background. You know, here in Korea, in Bucheon, a highly densely populated area, with online shopping all the rage, the place is filled with scooters and motorcycles. So you probably will hear some of that in the background. But just to go on here with my poster presentation. So my poster presentation is derived from a paper that I've been working on. And so the title differs slightly from what is perhaps listed in a copy of the program. But the title as now stands: The Social Identity Construction of Cosmopolitanism, the Nation State and Transnational Social Justice Movement. So the intent of the paper is to illustrate how nation states potentially can be utilized to create cosmopolitan greater communities through their political capacities. With the model of the European Union in mind as a regional effort in this regard to use the power capabilities of the European nation states and to as building blocks to fortify a supranational identity, being European, as increasingly represented by supranational institutions, the European Union institutions. And so that was the real-world empirical case to inspire this thought effort that I've put forward here. And so the challenge that we're confronting is nationalism, that the rise of populist reactionary nationalism, and as manifested in the United States with Donald Trump and elsewhere, of course, in Hungary under Viktor Orban, and also in Poland under the Law and Justice Party, and tendencies in this direction in Russia and elsewhere, in Brazil, but these are all nation states, and nation states are polarizing, intensifying into their internal polarization because of the reaction within these societies to the complex interdependency of globalization. And so as a result of globalization broadly understood, meaning the expansion of markets and by actors, economic and state actors, and other economic actors, individuals as well, to broader and broader horizons in terms of their planning, their activity, their exploitation, and the consequences of that globalization, which includes increasing diversity within these societies, and particularly also a growing degree of diversification regarding those who are committed to or vest their interests in the opportunities available to their career opportunities, their social mobility opportunities that globalization makes available through for those who are equipped to exploit them. You know, have formal certification with higher education degrees, speaking more than one language fluently, and the increasing movement of labor and goods across territories, across borders, is challenging traditional ascriptive notions of what is the ideal, let us say, American, for example, implicit or explicit, unspoken or articulated, that is coming under challenge from those traditional groups. Typically in Europe, they're the titular groups after which those nation states are named: Germany, the French, France, Italy, Poland. But the United States, of course, is not named after an ethnic group like those European states are. It's a territory, but it's still a nation state. like Brazil is a nation state, but territorial based, more territorial based than cultural based, ethnic, cultural based. And so these societies are polarizing around particularly those groups that feel that are traditionally ascriptively associated with the core culture of the nation. And I mean the dominant cultural group. I don't mean core in the sense of that it is justifiably the core. It's just the culture that has dominated the state and set the formal and informal standards for status and for gaining status within these societies. And that's just traditionally assumed. So of course, the core culture in the United States is the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant core culture, into which Europeans have readily assimilated. But of course, given the histories of the United States and the New World in general, where slave labor was part of settler colonialism, that racial categories are strong and difficult to transcend. So the paper implies this social identity theory. I already mentioned social mobility as an aspiration for an individual to join the outgroup that has a higher status in comparison with that individual's in-group in comparative evaluation. So if I belong to many different groups. For example, in my case, I'm an American, I'm Italian American, I'm a Caucasian, I'm male, I can go on and on and on. I'm also a member of a family, and if I compare myself with one of my in-group identities with another out-group, and I come across feeling my in-group is inferior, I have 3 identity management strategies that I can adopt, and this is laid out in this figure here from on a social identity theory by Scheepers and Ellemers. Social mobility is one social management, identity management strategy, which I leave the in-group and join the out-group if it allow me in, and that's crossing class boundaries, for example. Class boundaries are permeable in the United States, but racial boundaries much less so. And another social identity strategy is to compare myself positively with the out-group after that initial negative reaction by changing the evaluation criteria. So an example would be in the case of globalization, comparing myself, for example, as part of if I belong to an indigenous community in the United States, for example, another marginalized, racially separate category, one way by which I might engage in social creativity is that, of course, I might view myself as being in negative, inferior status position in regard to my oppressors, the European settler state that dominates the American society. But I might change my evaluation criteria to, well, but I am working for global cosmopolitan values in the form of protecting the global environment in the midst of this great crisis facing humankind, the Anthropocene climate crisis. And to the extent to which, that is one way by which to understand the indigenous movement, that they are the water protectors, that they are protecting the Amazon rainforests. Of course, this has to provide substantive benefits, though. A status is important, but also it has to provide a route by which to obtain social mobility, and that means having resources available for those social justice movement actors, like the indigenous peoples movements and the global climate movement, intersecting resources, including career resources, and that's facilitated by providing institutions around which to coalesce these global social justice movement, civil society actors as part of not only national but global civil society actors. And again, to go back to the European Union model as the example of those most advanced, perhaps regionally in this regard, that there are real identifiable European Union institutions and around which the European Union leadership attempts to encourage even social society marginalized, traditionally ascriptively marginalized groups such as women, for example, to mobilize around universal human rights such as feminist and women's equality, and thereby identifying that movement with European values. And that's an example. So, and we have an example on a global level potentially with the indigenous peoples movement and its climate and environmental activism. So and so that's social creativity in a dialectical relationship, providing social mobility, because one of the aims of social justice movements in general is to create opportunities for greater social opportunity structures to engage in social creativity and social mobility by challenging the state and the traditionally scriptively assigned hierarchical status differentiations, by changing those status differentiations to contentious politics, sustained contentious politics. For example, like the civil rights movement and the women's movement, the LGBTQ movement. These are all traditionally scriptively denigrated groups. And to change that, of course, is one of the objectives of social justice movements, and to change their status through reconfiguring the perceptions that prevail regarding them that have been created, institutionalized, and legitimated by the core culture, white patriarchal heteropatriarchy, for example, in the American case. So so this, in terms of global social justice movements, that's facilitated insofar as you provide, international organizations to promote global human rights, or internationally, transnationally, the European Union, the United Nations. But of course, the United Nations typically seems to be less institutionally developed in this regard. Now, to do this, of course, I mean, we have to bring the economic side of this. And of course, that's been emphasized very much insofar as, for example, the Green New Deal is very much aimed at trying to shift and guide the global business community in this direction towards supporting sustainable development and of course, very clear linkages being made in the media about how, for example, that in this terms of intersectionality, you see, for example, that the traditionally marginalized groups in America that are also concentrated in the areas with the worst levels of pollution and that lower health statistics. Quality health statistics, and this is all manifested to the COVID-19 pandemic, right? Insofar as that the intersection of all these vulnerabilities are more starkly highlighted by the COVID-19 pandemic, and so this is obviously necessary and can be, and there are efforts in this direction. I mean, of course, one of the elements that highlights I wanted to make in this arguments I wanted to make in this presentation is that this is the potentiality is there and it's at work. There are trends in this direction already at work. So, for example, it's typical now for big corporations to have sustainability officers. That you appoint somebody who's responsible for globally, socially, environmentally responsible investment in business strategies. The impact of the New Left movements on human resource management, and the argument are typically made that diversity in boardrooms, diversity in human resources, increasing diversity leads to a greater corporate competitiveness and success, business success in terms of making more money. So as I mentioned, the social creativity is in a dialectical relationship with social mobility through successful social justice movements insofar as creating greater opportunity structures to engage in social creativity for all groups that are, in particular for those that are traditionally marginalized and ascriptively identified as inferior. That it provides greater social mobility, individual personal social mobility options for members of those groups, and so that is the argument in the paper. But just to conclude, I mean, the focus here is also on nation states, insofar as the nation states have this power capability because they are nation states to mobilize their resources and the power of the state to create these greater opportunity structures for social creativity and social mobility, even at the same time as these nation states are showing polarization and historical tendencies towards authoritarian populism. Of course, the three most famous examples of that are Nazi Germany, Fascist Italy, and Imperial Japan. And you know, we saw elements that of that in Trumpism, but that's a topic for another paper. But the European Union is an example of the mobilizing and harnessing the liberal nationalist power capabilities of the nation state, as opposed to a multi-ethnic state or a multinational state. Multinational states included the old Soviet Union and old Yugoslavia. Multi-ethnic states are the post-colonial states, typically in Asia and Africa. With more or less arbitrarily drawn borders, for example, in those cases that they inherited. But it's the liberal intergovernmentalism of the European Union is an example of harnessing the power of the power capabilities of the nation state in association with liberal progressive values to use that power capability to harness those resources to build something on the foundation of those building blocks of the European Union member states, so that the member states are the building blocks of the European Union, but the European Union is more than the sum of its parts. Like I tell my students, right? You put these building blocks together and you build a house. It's not just a pile of blocks. It's something more than the sum of its parts. And that's cosmopolitanism. That's an example of cosmopolitanism in terms of how the strategy for building supranational identities represented by supranational institutions. Obviously it's a long-term process, and of course there are hiccups along the way, so to speak, with Brexit, for example, in the case of the European Union. But at the same time, you see, particularly in reaction to the COVID-19 pandemic, that the European Union is moving forward in further integration and in the pandemic response. And so, for example, even if Marine Le Pen, for example, wins the presidential election against Emmanuel Macron next year in France, she's already saying that she's not going to withdraw France from the euro. It's noteworthy that, of course, Britain was never in the eurozone, right? It never was in the eurozone, unlike France. So it might well be the case that even if this Trumpist phenomenon extends into France as a parallel with outcome with the election of Marine Le Pen in France, the economic costs of leaving the European Union would be so great that she might go the way of Donald Trump, one term and out. So that's the overview of the presentation, and so I look forward to interacting with you during the upcoming conference. So thank you very much, and that is it for now. And I'm going to end my presentation at this point. Thank you. Bye-bye.